finding the right distance from experience.
Yeah, it's been a thing that I have explored for decades. I believe its origin for me was in Gene Genlin's comment about it, in which he said to somebody, if you want to know how the soup smells, don't stick your nose in it. And that stuck with me. I understood it. I watched it regularly in my work and in my practice. I take as an example, because it's more extreme, and I think one we all relate to, is the example of when somebody says something to you that really catches you off guard. And we get kind of flustered and kind of off center, and we kind of just tend to go unconscious and disappear. So the experience is too intense. And if you want to really do something alive and creative with it, you have to back away from it far enough that you're not so overwhelmed. So that's an example of being too close, being way too close to experience. What I have noticed, though, by dealing with it in terms of distance, that people began to be able to observe themselves, or they began to get a sense of that, because you can have a bodily sense of being too close. There's a feeling of pressure and a feeling of being pushed or rushed that comes with being too close. And so I really try to help people say, wait, slow down, pay attention, move away from it far enough that you can observe what's actually happening inside of yourself. I have learned over the years that for people with a lot of trauma, meditation, finding a meditative distance is most important. And what I mean by a meditative distance is in a kind of focusing distance. I'm always looking to get a little closer and a little further away, but I'm directly in dialogue, let's say, with my experience. But I think when it comes to trauma, it's too big, and that people do better when they find a more of a meditative distance, which is not so interactive. It really is finding enough distance to just be purely observational, because the interactive distance is too overwhelming and too fraught with emotion to be able to find an interactive place. And it requires a much more distance, which I think of as a meditative distance. If somebody really wanted to understand that, they got to spend time paying attention to the variable of what their distance and relationship is to their experience. And the more you do that, I think all of whatever the rest of what we say becomes more obvious. Because as you observe it, you begin to see how much being too close to your experience increases your reactivity, and how much being too far away separates you from life. And once after you know that for yourself, then the rest of what you and I have been saying, I think, is pretty obvious to most people. It is my experience, Serge, over and over again, that if somebody really learns about right distance, right relationship is really easy for them, because there's no stress, there's no strain, there's no effort involved. You just kind of naturally turn towards being more open and curious and compassionate.
Yeah.
It happens more naturally.